On today's show, is it really possible to write something unique? Spoiler alert, you might actually be surprised with the answer. Mom's here, let's find out. Hello, everybody. My name is Rob. This is my mom, Karen. This is Books, Banter, and Beyond. Today, we're going to talk about a not so simple question. I guess we can call it that. Um, and it's something I always like. I hate, but I'm just like, that's just how it is. Is it possible to make something unique? Nah, not really.
Everything that's
Um,
been done has been done before.
exactly. But that's actually part of the answer to why unique doesn't necessarily mean unique in the sense of what we think. So let's jump into it. Literature suggests pure originality may be a myth. Shocker, right? So, literary theory has long argued that no text exists in isolation. Every work is shaped by something earlier, whether it's oral language, whether it's a written story, or some other form of, visual. Writer Jorge Luis Borges, in his essay The Library of Babel, imagined all possible books already existing, suggesting originality isn't invention, but selection and arrangement. Interesting thought there, right? And literary critic Roland Barthes famously argued in The Death of the Author that texts are built from cultural language already in circulation, not created basically from nothing. So, if you look at it from this point of view, uniqueness is not unique. Uniqueness actually means you have to have something already done. Um, so, with that first section being said, um, what is this? How do you feel on that? Is it kind of like an oh wow moment, or is it kind of more of a yeah, I probably could have told you that
Yeah,
type of thing? I mean, for me, I think because of what I used to, read and watch in the 90s versus now, it's very obvious that this is the thing. It's
right,
kind of
right.
like anything you look at, it looks like something you've seen 20 times prior.
There's an expression, there's nothing new under the sun.
There you go.
It just has
So
to
if
be, yeah,
that
exactly.
so if that's the case then, and this is actually an interesting question that someone asked me once, if everything is already a thing, what is the writer's job if it isn't to give you something new, I guess? And I kind of thought about this for a while because obviously the writer's job is to write. That's what they do. They write books. But I don't know if I have an exact answer. Do you have an answer to what the writer's job is? You know,
Uh, I'm going to make a funny. The writer's job is to make us think we're reading something different. I'm kidding.
yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, look, we can talk about romance books, right? A romance book follows the same arc, right? Woman
Yes.
meets a man, they fall in love, they move to an island or whatever, and they live happily ever after. And in between that, certain things happen. So the arc is the same, and I do agree with this that the theme is the same. I don't think there's any story that hasn't been told out there. It's it's the wrapping around it. It's the descriptions of the characters. It's the descriptions for me. It's the locale. It's all the other stuff. The story I mean, I go through stories and say, I know what's going to happen. I'll literally say, I know what's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I just know it's going to happen, and I look forward to it because it's comforting. So I
That's
don't
a
know.
good word, actually, and I think that's why people go back to the same type
Right,
of story, fiction or
right,
nonfiction, because they already know the deal, they already
right,
know the line, so they're doing it for the fact of, "Hey, I've already done this 10 times, let's do it another time because I enjoy," you know,
right.
and that brings us to writers don't create new material, they create new angles. And I like this kind of visual. So, author John Barth, in his essay, The Literature of Exhaustion, argues that originality doesn't disappear, it changes strategy. Instead of inventing a new story, as you were saying, it's the same thing, you create a new voice, a new structure, perspective, or emotional truth. And literary scholars note that two writers can tell the same exact story and have it be radically different
Hmm.
because of the individual's personality, upbringing, where they are. And that's what makes it different. So, exactly what you just said. And romance is probably the easiest way to do it because that
Right.
follows a very easy ABC arc.
Right.
Um, but it's how you interact with the people. It's where you put them. Maybe you give them a job that they usually wouldn't have in a romance. Maybe you make, more. There was one book where the main character was I think, marine biologist, which was definitely not the normal type of job at the time for a romance book. And it actually made the story much more entertaining
Hmm.
because it brought to life a whole nother view of the person. One of my favorites is when the male character does a job that's usually not personified as a male job. So, like, they're a chef or they are a artist, and you get a whole different perspective because you get a whole different,
Right. Right. Right.
right?
Right.
So, can voice in this case then be the form of originality in terms of uniqueness?
I think it'd be one of the things. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All
Location,
right,
voice. Um, I listen to audiobooks, so
right.
there's another element in there as well, depending on who the narrator is. Like I'm reading a book right
I didn't think of that, but that's a good.
I'm listening to a book right now, which to be honest, I'm not as into it as all the other books. This is a different
Mhm.
author, but again, it's the same style. It's on an island, and the woman moves there, and blah, but it's being spoken by a woman with a British accent,
Okay.
which is actually a little disconcerting because I know that they're in the United States, literally at Martha's Vineyard. And here's this woman who's narrating, and I think it was a bad mismatch of voices because it doesn't add anything to it. The only thing it would add to it is if, in fact, this family was from there and they go back or something. So I think it can be good or bad. I don't know if you wanted that answer, but I think it could be good or bad.
Well, I'll actually use that for mine because I just finished a nonfiction book about the brain, and the person reading it. And again, it's a nonfiction. It's a book of information, but the person reading it is very animated and kind of funny. And when he reads the book, it's so much more entertaining
Ah,
because he's making these quips, but he's making these jokes in form of that's how you'd want to hear it vocally.
right,
And that's what made me actually one reason I stayed through all the way because the guy who they picked to choose was just purely fun. And I never would expected a science book to be that entertaining,
right,
if only for the fact that the author
right, right,
was just having a grand old time, right?
right.
So lastly up, uniqueness may come from constraint, not freedom. I like the way this is all done. So some of the most original literature emerges under constraints, which again we've talked about already. A specific format, specific rules of the game. Everything has, when you write a sci-fi book, you have to make sure it is sci-fi. If you diverge, you end up writing a different book, and then people go, what the hell is,
Right, what
what
was
is
that?
this?
Right.
Um, Experimental groups like Oulipo deliberately restricted language to force unexpected creativity.
What's
So
Olipo?
some groups, writing groups, will make rules for the authors or for the writer and say, hey, you need to only use this kind of thing to make sure that you stay within the format of the genre, of the topic. And what they found was that the authors all of a sudden started coming up with these crazy ideas that worked because they were so restricted on the rules
Ah,
of it. Scholars have also argued that total freedom often leads to too much imitation
mm,
and not actually a good book, so to speak.
hmm,
So in a sense, what makes a work unique isn't oh, I've read this before solely, but also you can't rewrite this because it's so much specific to the individual who is writing. And I think that's where the uniqueness comes in. The uniqueness is more so, hey, person A from this place wrote, like, we'll use your example about a woman moved to an island, falls in love, da da da. Person B from this place wrote the same story, but whoa, because this person maybe does something else, they wrote a very reproductive book because it's specific to that individual. So you
Right.
can't reproduce
Right.
that. So that I think is where the uniqueness comes in because yeah, at the end of the day, when you pick up genre A and you pick up genre A from this person, you're going to get the same thing.
Right.
And that's just, I think, how it is.
So, do you look for that when you're picking out a book, that there is consistency, that there is the same? Is that
I mean, I look for a hopefully what I'm picking up is actually what it is. A lot of times a title doesn't always match the story, so I go in thinking, "Oh, it's a book about this," and then come to find it's totally different, so I'm like, "Nope, wrong thing." But more importantly, I do want to make sure that the whether it's somebody reading the book audibly or whether I'm reading it in a book, the person is following the rules of the thing. So if I pick up a book about dragons, I better well hope, or that they better well hope that they've written about dragons
Mhm.
and not just some sort of metaphor or some sort of whatever, because that's not what I picked up to begin with.
Right.
So I do make sure that before I buy or listen or whatever, I kind of read through a little bit, I get a synopsis, I check out the story and go, oh, even though it says dragon, this has nothing to do with dragons.
Right.
So that's kind
Right.
of what I'm looking at to make sure that I'm actually going to stick through it because the last thing I want to do is either buy one or download one and then realize this is
This is not what I
nowhere near what I.
Right. Well, we want you to go visit the next chapter bookstore.shop. There are a lot of unique books in there. It is a gently used bookstore, which means that that's is my favorite thing. Every book that's in there has been touched or handled or read by somebody else, and I think that's really really cool. Go check it out and let us know what would you like us to be talking about and some of our next shows. Put it in the comments, and we will be with you next week. Rob, any last words?
Be unique, just like everybody else, right? Isn't that how that goes?
Be unique like everybody else. Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. See you next week, everyone. Bye.